Message. Sales is not sleazy. As coaches and entrepreneurs, the number one problem many face in sales is asking for the money, isn't it? Yeah. But the thing is, if you can't sell your services, you don't have a business. And I know it can be a difficult and uncomfortable conversation to have, especially when you're passionate about what you do and don't want to come across as pushy or aggressive. So, today on this episode of Make It Click, my guest is Jess Reidell. Jess is a sales success coach. Welcome to the show, Jess.
Thank you, Christine. I so appreciate you having me on your show, and I'm really excited about today's conversation.
And as I am too, talking about sales, before I started my own business, I probably looked at sales as being sleazy myself. I have to admit that. But I'd like to start this out with helping our viewers understand what are, I guess, the components of a sales conversation. Because I believe, it's not just, "Oh, here's what I do, and do you wanna buy it?" Can you kinda lay out what that might look like?
Absolutely. There is a process, and regardless of how magnificent your product or service happens to be, you still require training and a process to follow in order to be successful in selling it. So sales is solving a problem, right? So and it is a conversation. That's why we call it a sales conversation. It's not just you forcing your solution on someone or being like, what's it going to take today for you to buy this? That's not what when we're selling an actual coaching service or consulting service. It is definitely a conversation to figure out if the individual that you're speaking to has what you offer and what you sell. So the conversation begins with building rapport. We always ask questions, right? We have to ask questions of our prospect to determine if they even need what we have. Because we're not going to try to close a sale with someone that in no way remotely needs what we're offering. That's a waste of time for everyone, and it's probably not going to work. So the building rapport, the questions, and then sort of summarizing the problem, really doing some active listening where you are maybe speaking about 40% of the time and you're listening about 60% of the time, and really active listening, taking in what the person is saying, showing empathy. And then, and only then, when you determine that that person is a fit for what you are offering, you offer the thing, right? And then, of course, the least favorite part of any of my clients, you close the sale. Like whether you like it or not, as you mentioned earlier, Christine, you need to ask for the money. And it shouldn't be something that makes you melt down in a scritchy panic, because if you believe in the value of what you're offering, that shouldn't phase you to at the end of determining that someone's a perfect fit for your service, for your offer, offering it to them and telling them how they can pay, right? As I know there's a certain sales coach whose favorite question is Visa or MasterCard. And I don't expect everybody to necessarily get on board with that. However, it is important that you have a really smooth flow to your sales conversation so that when you get to the end and asking for the money, it is seamless.
Yes, I identify with that, asking questions, and getting to know what the problem is. Because early on in my business, didn't do that. I had numerous conversations with people, but I still remember walking away from numerous conversations saying, "I don't even know what they needed." Because people would ask, "So what do you do?" They wanted to find out if I was a good fit for them, if they could use my services. And it's like, "So what do you do?" And so I would, tell them, "This is how I help people," everything. And they'd be, "Well, that's not what I need." I had no idea what they needed. So that is huge, huge of finding out what do they need. Now you mentioned a percentage of, I think, speaking and then listening. I think, there's value in first explaining the value of your services, and then listening to the needs of your customers. Like I say, yes, we have to talk, but then we gotta shut up. And what's happening with so many people, when they keep talking? Like,
Oh,
what's
let's
going
talk
on?
about that. This is a juicy one, Christine. I'm so glad you brought this one up. This is the common challenge, and I addressed it recently in the sales success series that I did. It's called talking past the close. My husband accuses me of doing this a lot because I do it with him. I do not do it when I'm in a sales conversation. You'd think I would learn and apply the same strategy to my marriage, but oftentimes that doesn't happen. So, say for instance, you have already stated, the program, what it entails, whatever your offer is, and you have stated the price. At that point, you then share how the client can handle their investment, and you can offer them, some people like the soft sort of the witch close, I have a pay in full option, which is blank, and then I have a payment plan, which is 12 payments of blank. How would you like to handle your investment today?
Stop talking. Yes. Oh,
Hold the
that
silence. I'm not expecting you to answer me because I didn't really give you the price, but anyway, what most people do,
yeah.
Christine, is they're uncomfortable with the silence and they start to kind of melt down. They're freaking out. They're like, maybe I didn't do a good enough job of explaining it. So they start over talking and they start adding on, ideas, features, benefits. Maybe they ask a question and you've lost you're in the losing seat if you take that avenue. And take it from me, I know I sound like I'm bragging and I probably am, but I have closed thousands of sales in my career. And each and every time when I followed the protocol and simply closed the sale, and even if I had to wait them out for 2, 3 minutes, I'd sit there with a pleasant expression on my face because they're going to do one of three things. They're going to ask you a question, they're going to throw up an objection, or they're going to tell you how they want to pay. Of course, number three is what we ultimately desire. However, it doesn't always go that way. So we need to also be prepared for the questions and the objections that come up. And after we handle those, we have to close the sale again. Like it or not, we got to go back in and make the effort to close the sale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that pause, just stopping the talking and letting them respond. Yes, I've been in numerous situations myself where it's not easy, it's not comfortable, but it's the best thing. Now, even before that, as you are talking to people about what your offer is and everything, are there any key things that people are saying that we should perk up to say, "Oh, I think I already made the sale." Like,
Great question. Okay, yeah. Well, absolutely. If they are in agreement with you, and this kind of sorry, my mind's all over the place right now because I want to share another great tool. If they are, telling you that they have the problem that you solve and they're saying, I really need this help. This is what I've been wanting to work on for a long time. Well, gosh, how long have you been waiting? And what is the outcome of not taking action to fix this problem, getting them to that point. And if you know that they specifically totally have the problem you solve, you don't necessarily need to ask them a million other questions. You can skip a few questions and jump ahead to the solution and explain that and go in for the close. And if they have other questions that may come up, you can address those and then of course close the sale again. Does that make sense? The other thing we can do is along the way in the conversation, we can do what we call trial closes or mini closes, right? Where we ask them a question. So, do you see how practicing your close with me is going to make you excellent and seamless as a closer in your sales process? And you'll say, Christine, play with me here.
oh,
You'll
I'm sorry.
say,
Oh, yes. Oh, you're absolutely right. Sorry.
oh, very good job. Top of the class, Christine. Awesome. Yeah. So again, getting them to agree with you along the way and say yes to certain things
Mm.
that you are presenting. And that yes, in the end, is going to be even stronger and more emphatic if they've said several yeses along the way.
Mm. Wait, and that it just brought to mind something that we hear often, like when we are presenting, we're doing a talk, especially on Zoom now. The theory of getting people from the very beginning of the presentation to start typing in the chat responses. Who wants to make more money? Put me in the chat. So you're kind of getting them to be used to responding and saying yes and whatnot, so that at the end of the presentation, when you make your offer, they're more prone to be like, oh, yeah, yeah, I want that. So I think they're fairly similar there, aren't they?
That is, yeah, and that's a great strategy. I think it's called the talk, type, touch, just getting people engaged from the get-go so they're not tuning you out, or they're not just sitting there judging you and disagreeing with you silently, but they're already sort of in a conversation with you, and they're in there's an energetic exchange that's happening, even if we're using technology, which is not one of my favorite things, but I've had to get better at it. 2020, I think we all had to, make friends with the Zoom app for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you say there was one other tip you wanted to share or?
No, it was the mini closes that I
Oh,
got
okay.
excited about talking about. I hadn't planned to talk about that today. That's kind of a next level training piece, but I just,
Mhm.
again, I wanted to deliver that suggestion to
Right.
our listeners here so that they can incorporate that tip if they're not doing it already.
Yeah. Well, and I liked, your little close with me, practicing the close. If people practice with you, the sales success coach, I am a firm believer in practicing. You have to practice everything, even a 30-second commercial, you have to practice. And when it
Exactly.
comes to the sales conversation, oh my goodness, that is even more important than the 30-second commercial. So yes, working with you and getting that done. Because again, people say, well, oh my goodness, you're so confident. Oh, you're so good at that. Yeah, they think you just woke up today and you were good at it. It's like, no, been practicing it a long time.
Well, exactly. And the analogy I like to make, I mean, you think of a musician, right? How do
Mhm,
you go to Carnegie Hall? You
mhm.
practice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and you had mentioned earlier about the percentages. Can you repeat that again about the percentages of the time you should be talking and the time you should be listening? And what, a top producer, what are those percentages? If you want to be a really good salesperson in your business, what's the percentage that you should be talking versus listening?
Okay, and a lot of people will come up with 50-50, which is close. However, you actually want to be doing less talking and more listening in your sales conversation. So it's like a 60-40 split. 60% of the time, you're listening,
Mhm,
40% of the time, you're talking. That means 60% of the time,
mhm,
simple math here, your prospect is speaking, right?
mhm.
They say the bottom performers in sales speak 70% of the time. So
Wow.
think about that.
Wow.
Think about that. Those people, they're talkers, right? They're chatty. They're talking away, talk, talking past the close, and they're probably like losing sales left and right. And they're bewildered as to why, because they shared so much and they were so enthusiastic or whatever it is.
Mhm,
But at the end of the day, we've got to really accept that there are some tried and true processes in a sales conversation that we don't need to reinvent the wheel
mhm,
for.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, and this we're all humans. We all have the human brain that needs that time to process, I think. And that's
Definitely.
where that pause in the conversation, you're giving the person you're talking to time to process what you just said. Because when you're just talking all the time, yeah, sure, they're listening to you, but they can't really take it in. think.
I can tell you're someone that's gotten a lot better at sales over the years, and I just want to compliment you on that, Christine. I can tell you've done your homework on this, and you've done some of the common mistakes and realized they weren't serving your sales process.
Mhm.
They weren't leading you to yeses, enough yeses, and you had to do what other people were telling you to do, even if you were in some resistance to it.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Jess, this has been wonderful, and we could just go on and on, I'm sure. If our listeners wanna get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Oh, great question. Thank you for asking that. If you would like to learn a little bit more about my work or working with me or doing something short term or long term, go to my website, which is agelessjess.com. AGELESSJESS.com. There is a place where you can actually sign up for your own Skyrocket Your Sales call. And let's dig in and figure out what the gaps are right now in your sales process so that we can fix them and plug those dams and get you skyrocketing your sales.
That's wonderful, Jess. I do have one final question for you today, and it's more about you and your business. And when
Sure.
you think back, is there something that comes to mind that you can say, wow, when I learned how to do this or that, or maybe there was a tool that you're using in your business now that it really makes a difference for you and it really makes your business click. Does anything come to mind for you?
Absolutely. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse here. However, Christine, it was the close. It was learning the energy of the close and being comfortable in the silence. And I didn't learn this technique in my own personal business. I learned it before. And I like every entrepreneur thought maybe, okay, maybe I don't have to do it like that anymore. Maybe I could do it differently. Maybe
Mhm.
they'll ask me to buy the thing before I even have to tell them the price. No, 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 it doesn't work that way. So I think the more that I practiced putting that figure on the table and asking for the money and
Mhm.
maintaining my energy level and my composure, the better I got at sales. So, like it or not, ABC, always be closing.
So that's how you got to be the sales success coach by doing it many, many years in your previous life, I guess you could say.
Many years in my previous life and many years, even currently, like selling my own coaching, selling someone else's coaching. There's just like
Yeah.
myriads of experience.
Mhm.
And again, like I said, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Mm.
And don't fool yourself that you don't have to ask for the money or that your product sells itself. Nothing sells itself, not even Girl Scout cookies. I joke about this often. It's like those cookies are pretty darn good, but we still need a Girl Scout to tell us the price and ask for the money, right?
Mhm.
Regardless of how yummy those cookies are.
Well, Jess, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Make It Click.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Christine. Thank you